George, what the hell is going on here? Why was I detained? Michael Denwood was in the interrogation room where he was taken after being detained. Danville County Police Chief George Nuth closed the door behind him. He and Michael have known each other since high school. The town is small, everyone here knows each other, but George sent his subordinates on a call to talk to the suspect without witnesses and extra ears. What the hell? George was angry, although he tried to speak calmly. His tone betrayed strong irritation. Are you asking me? Do you think I killed your neighbor, Mr. Lynch? What? I didn't kill anyone. The neighbors saw you go into his house, and then came out, and there was blood on your clothes. They called the police. And you believe them? I've been at home all this time. I got drunk that day and was sleeping soundly. And who can confirm this, eh? A bloody knife with your fingerprints was found in Lynch's house. Are you completely out of your mind? I'm not going to cover your ass, not in this case. All the evidence is against you. George, believe me, I didn't kill him. I swear. You have to get me out. I must. I've gotten you out of jail time so many times, pulled you out of all sorts of scrapes, but you managed to get into trouble again. Of course, I don't care about you. I didn't have a daddy, a police chief, who prepared a place for his son. By the way, do the city authorities know what your daddy helped hide from justice? Oh, you bastard, George could barely resist not to punch this freak. He helped us both. If it wasn't for my late father, we would have been behind bars a long time ago. Freak! Take it easy. Michael realized that he could put pressure on George. He's been doing it all his life. George pulled him out of trouble and covered for him every time, not because of their friendship. They had not talked for a long time. Right after the very incident that Michael is hinting about. George had to help Michael for fear of losing his place, reputation, and going to jail. We drove Raoul to suicide together. The two of us bothered him every day at school. You bullied the kid as much as I did. So we will answer together. And if you don't help me, I'll drag you with me. Well, you're a brute. And what to do? Not everyone was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. It was all presented to you on a silver platter, and I achieved everything myself. Did you? What exactly? George grinned. All you did was drink, fight. You've been trying to pretend to be cool since high school, but in fact, you're a stupid ass. Then why did you communicate with me? He was just as stupid. To hell with it all, and with Raoul too. He died a long time ago. So what? Will you get me out of this mess? Or I'll start remembering the past. George ran a hand through his hair and sat down opposite Michael. Are you sure you didn't kill him? I wish I was dead. I got drunk like a pig and slept all day. Yes, I had disagreements with this freak Lynch, but I could only punch him in the face and that's all. Then who did the neighbors see? And why are your fingerprints on the knife that killed Lynch? How do I know? Maybe someone wanted to frame me. So check it out. Yes, who needs to set you up? I'm a big shot, too. Here it is necessary to think seriously. In the meantime, you'll have to sit in a cell. What? My head is cracking like a transformer booth. I need a hangover. But you'll have to forget about drinking for a long time. And I can't let you out. There's no one to pay the bail for you, so sit down. Fuck you. But look, George, I'm not going to keep quiet and cover for you. George took Michael to the cell, and he went to his office. He was terribly angry with Michael. He would have been very happy to put him behind bars for a long time, to such an extent this guy got. George didn't have enough problems of his own. A divorce from his wife was looming on the horizon, so he still had to mess with this freak, fearing that he would tell everything at any moment. He wished he hadn't gotten involved with Michael in high school. At that time, he thought Michael was a cool guy and wanted to be the same, so he also annoyed Sam Rowell. Sam, this quiet kid, they drove the poor guy to suicide, and George's father helped hush up the case. And now this freak is blackmailing him. Yes, he's been blackmailing him with this case all his life. And George is afraid, because he will not only blacken his name, lose his job, go to jail, but also blacken his father's name, and his mother will not survive this. The father took advantage of his position and hushed up everything, but what would another father do in relation to his son? Yes, George, if he had a son, would have done the same. But George grew up, realized his guilt and carried it all his life, and Michael never corrected himself. On the contrary, he began to blackmail George. Now let this son of a bitch sit in a cell for a while, that's not enough for him. But something had to be done, because Michael can open his fucking mouth and tell everything. But what? What can be done here? George interrogated the neighbors himself, was at the crime scene and saw both the knife and the boot prints that led to Michael's house. Moreover, everything coincided: fingerprints, shoe prints, and bloody clothes were found in a tank with dirty laundry. And this freak claims that he didn't kill. Neighbors saw him go into a neighbor's house and come out covered in blood. No, there's nothing you can do. Michael signed his own sentence. And what if everything is put on a deranged state, that the neighbor drove Michael with his claims and swearing? It might work. The same neighbors will confirm that Michael's neighbor was a pain in the ass. George's thoughts were interrupted by a conversation of colleagues who returned from a call. The working day was coming to an end, everyone was going home. And George wasn't going to stay at the station. What's the boss? Did he confess? No, he denies everything. Nothing, let him sit, remember, and think. Okay. See you tomorrow, Chief. Bye. Have a nice evening. George looked at the monitor from the surveillance camera. Michael was lying on a cot in the cell and seemed to be asleep. George swore to himself and left the station. Only Michael and the duty officer remained in the station. At midnight, George knocked on the door of the station. The attendant came to the door. Good night, Chief. Why can't you sleep? Forgot something? No, I urgently need to talk to the detainee. New circumstances of the case have been revealed. What is it? I can't say yet. Open the door, Wally. The officer opened the door and let George in, and when he turned to close it, a strong blow with a baton fell on his head. George tied up the officer, took the keys to the camera and went to Michael. Michael couldn't sleep, his head was bursting. There was a clang of keys at the door, and Michael sat up on his bunk. George came into the cell. Oh, did you bring me a beer or did you come to free me? Release. I knew you would do it, otherwise I was pretending to be a touchy. I can't, it won't work out. And how could you do that? Did you set up some homeless guy instead of me? And that's it. George took a pistol out of his holster and pointed it at Michael. Are you completely off the rails? George was standing with his back to the surveillance camera, and his face was not visible, but Michael, looking at the face of the police chief, was dumbfounded with fear and surprise. You? Even though Sam Roll has changed, grown up, but Michael will never forget those eyes, those eyes. And if earlier they looked with fear and pity, now the fire of anger and thirst for revenge burned in them. But how? You're dead. You jumped off the roof, George and I were there. How? Apparently, my revenge was stronger than death, and I made a contract. I was given a chance to quench my thirst for revenge. Though not immediately, but they gave it. Goodbye, Michael, meet me in hell. Sam Roll emptied the entire clip into Michael. Again his face took the form of George. He smiled at the camera on purpose and left. That same night, Police Chief George was taken into custody. The fact that he was accused of murder did not fit into his head. At first he thought that Michael had blabbed after all, but when he found out that Michael had been killed, he didn't know what to think. And how can you believe it? All the evidence was against him: the duty officer who claimed that George hit him and tied him up, surveillance footage, his fingerprints, a gun. And then it got even worse. We watched the recording of his conversation with Michael. The camera did not record sound, but there was a person who can read lips. That's where the mystery about Sam Roll surfaced, about the abuse of authority, both by George himself and his father. George's fate was decided. Leaving the court and still not believing in what was happening, he noticed familiar features in the crowd of onlookers. The features he saw every night in his nightmares, those eyes. In the nightmares, there was fear, despair and pain in those eyes, and now they burned with malicious joy, the joy of revenge. That same night, George could not stand all this horror and committed suicide in his cell.